Jill paced her living room, her hands shaking. $500 fine. This can't be happening. She sank onto the couch, trying to hold back tears of frustration. After a few minutes, her husband, Mark, arrived home from work. "Hey, honey, what's wrong?" he asked, concerned. Jill quickly explained the encounter with Nancy and the hefty fine. Mark's face darkened. "That's outrageous. They can't do that. We'll fight this." "But you know how the HOA is," Jill said wearily. "They hold all the power. And Nancy hates me ever since I spoke up at the last meeting of the ridiculous restrictions." Mark clenched his fist. "Well, this time she's gone too far. I'm going to that HOA meeting tomorrow night and giving them a piece of my mind." The next evening, the small community center was packed with tense residents. Jill and Mark took seats near the back, bracing themselves. When Nancy called Jill's name, her heart raced. "Jill Barker, you have been fined $500 for violating Article 7, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws," Nancy announced, her thin lips curling into a smug smile. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Jill stood, her voice shaking. "I was just petting a stray dog that looked hungry. I didn't know it was against the rules. How can you fine me for showing a little kindness?" "The rules are the rules," Nancy snapped. "We have a duty to maintain the pristine appearance of our community. Stray animals are unsightly and pose a health risk." Suddenly, the back door burst open, and a uniformed officer strode in. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" he demanded. Nancy blinked in surprise. "This is a private HOA meeting. Who are you?" "Animal Control Officer John Riggs." He held up a hand. "I received a report of an animal welfare violation in this neighborhood. Now, what exactly is the issue with this resident petting a stray dog?" Jill's heart leaped with hope as the officer turned to face her. This was her chance to get justice. Jill paced her living room, her hands shaking. $500 fine. This can't be happening. She sank onto the couch, trying to hold back tears of frustration. After a few minutes, her husband, Mark, arrived home from work. "Hey, honey, what's wrong?" he asked, concerned. Jill quickly explained the encounter with Nancy and the hefty fine. Mark's face darkened. "That's outrageous. They can't do that. We'll fight this." "But you know how the HOA is," Jill said wearily. "They hold all the power. And Nancy hates me ever since I spoke up at the last meeting of the ridiculous restrictions." Mark clenched his fist. "Well, this time she's gone too far. I'm going to that HOA meeting tomorrow night and giving them a piece of my mind." The next evening, the small community center was packed with tense residents. Jill and Mark took seats near the back, bracing themselves. When Nancy called Jill's name, her heart raced. "Jill Barker, you have been fined $500 for violating Article 7, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws," Nancy announced, her thin lips curling into a smug smile. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Jill stood, her voice shaking. "I was just petting a stray dog that looked hungry. I didn't know it was against the rules. How can you fine me for showing a little kindness?" "The rules are the rules," Nancy snapped. "We have a duty to maintain the pristine appearance of our community. Stray animals are unsightly and pose a health risk." Suddenly, the back door burst open, and a uniformed officer strode in. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" he demanded. Nancy blinked in surprise. "This is a private HOA meeting. Who are you?" "Animal Control Officer John Riggs." He held up a hand. "I received a report of an animal welfare violation in this neighborhood. Now, what exactly is the issue with this resident petting a stray dog?" Jill's heart leaped with hope as the officer turned to face her. This was her chance to get justice. Jill took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Officer Riggs, I was fined $500 for simply petting a stray dog on the sidewalk in front of my home. The HOA president, Nancy, is claiming I violated the community bylaws." Nancy's face flushed with indignation. This is an internal HOA matter. You have no jurisdiction here, officer. But Riggs held up a hand, silencing her. Ma'am, I'm afraid I do have jurisdiction when it comes to the welfare of animals in this community. He turned to Jill. Can you show me where this incident occurred? Jill nodded gratefully and led the officer outside, with Nancy and the other HOA board members reluctantly following. As they approached the spot where Jill had petted the dog, Riggs crouched down and examined the ground, his brow furrowed. I don't see any signs of damage or disturbance here, he said, standing up. And from what I can tell, the dog seemed friendly and in relatively good health. Hardly a threat to the pristine appearance of your community. Nancy opened her mouth to protest, but Riggs held up a hand. I'm afraid I can't condone fining a resident for showing compassion to a stray animal. That's not only heartless, it's a violation of the city's animal welfare ordinances. The crowd erupted in murmurs and applause. Jill felt a surge of triumph as Riggs turned to Nancy, his expression stern. I'm going to have to issue you a citation for that unlawful fine. And if I receive any more reports of residents being punished for kind acts toward animals, there will be serious consequences for this HOA. He glanced around at the stunned faces. Is that clear? Nancy's lips thinned to a tight line, but she nodded stiffly. Jill caught Mark's eye, and they exchanged a relieved smile. For once, the HOA had met its match, and justice had prevailed. As the crowd filed out of the community center, Jill and Mark lingered behind, still buzzing with adrenaline. Riggs approached them, a sympathetic smile on his face. I'm glad I could help, he said. The way that HOA was treating you was just wrong. Jill nodded gratefully. Thank you, Officer Riggs. I can't believe Nancy had the nerve to fine me for something so harmless. I was just trying to help that poor stray dog. And that's exactly what you should have been able to do, Riggs replied. Pets and animals are an important part of any community. Punishing people for showing them kindness is heartless and short-sighted. Mark shook the officer's hand. We really appreciate you stepping in like that. Nancy and the rest of that HOA board have been making our lives miserable for years with their ridiculous rules and petty power trips. Riggs nodded knowingly. I've dealt with my fair share of overzealous HOA presidents. They forget that their job is to serve the community, not rule it with an iron fist. He paused, then added, Say, do you two have any pets of your own? Jill shook her head. No, we've always wanted one, but the HOA rules make it nearly impossible. They're very strict about the number and type of animals allowed. That's a shame. Riggs stroked his chin thoughtfully. Well, maybe it's time for a change around here. How would you two feel about fostering that stray dog I saw earlier? I'd be happy to look the other way and make sure the HOA doesn't give you any more trouble. Jill's eyes widened. Really? You'd do that for us? Absolutely. Riggs smiled. Consider it a small act of rebellion against an overbearing system. What do you say? Mark and Jill exchanged an excited glance. We'd be honored, Jill said, her voice quivering with emotion. Suddenly, the idea of defying the HOA and giving a needy dog a loving home filled her with a sense of purpose. As they shook hands with Riggs, Jill knew this was just the beginning of their fight for justice. The HOA had met its match, and she was ready to take them on, one pet at a time. Over the next few days, Jill and Mark eagerly prepared their home for their new canine companion. They set up a cozy dog bed, stocked up on high-quality food and toys, and made sure their fenced-in backyard was secure. When Officer Riggs arrived with the friendly stray, Jill's heart swelled with joy. Oh, you poor thing, she cooed, gently running her fingers through the dog's matted fur. Don't worry, you're home now. The dog wagged his tail and leaned into her touch, his eyes shining with gratitude. We're going to take such good care of you, Jill promised, already smitten. As Riggs filled them in on the dog's background, Jill and Mark listened intently. We think he's about 3 years old and was likely abandoned by his previous owners, the officer explained. He's in decent health, but could use some TLC and proper nutrition. Well, he's certainly come to the right place, Mark said, giving the dog a gentle pat. We're going to spoil and rotten. Riggs nodded approvingly. I'm sure you will. Just remember, keep a low profile with the HOA. I'll do my best to keep them off your back, but they're a persistent bunch. Jill's expression hardened. Don't worry, officer. We're not going to let them push us around anymore. This dog is part of our family now, and we'll fight tooth and nail to protect him. As Riggs left, Jill and Mark showered their new furry friend with affection. What should we call you? Hot. Jill mused, scratching behind the dog's ears. How about Rebel? The dog let out a contented bark, as if approving the name. Jill grinned, already picturing the look on Nancy's face when she found out about their latest act of defiance. Little did the HOA know this was just the beginning of their reckoning. Over the next few weeks, Jill and Mark reveled in their newfound freedom with Rebel the dog. They took him on long walks, played fetch in the backyard, and showered him with affection. For the first time in years, their home felt truly alive. But their happiness was short-lived. One afternoon, as Jill was throwing a ball for Rebel in the front yard, Nancy came marching across the street, her face twisted with fury. Just what do you think you're doing? She spat, glaring at the dog. Jill straightened up, her grip tightening on Rebel's leash. I'm playing with my dog. Is that a problem? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Your dog? Nancy's beady eyes narrowed. I don't recall seeing any dog registration forms from you. And last time I checked, the HOA bylaws strictly prohibit residents from keeping any animals on the property without prior approval. Jill felt a chill run down her spine. Well, the animal control officer who brought Rebel to us said it was fine. He knows all about the situation. Nancy let out a harsh laugh. Oh, I'm sure he does. But unfortunately, his word doesn't hold any water here. This is my community, and I make the rules. She whipped out her phone and began furiously typing. That's it. I'm calling the police. That mongrel is trespassing, and you're harboring an illegal pet. You're going to be fined again, and this time, the dog is getting impounded. Jill's heart raced as she frantically tried to think of a way to stop Nancy. But before she could respond, a familiar voice rang out. I don't think so, Nancy. Officer Riggs strode onto the scene, his expression stern. I'm afraid I can't allow you to call the authorities on this resident or their dog. Nancy's face went pale. But the bylaws. The bylaws don't supersede city animal welfare ordinances. Riggs cut her off. And I've already granted this family permission to foster this animal. You have no grounds to intervene. Jill watched in stunned silence as Nancy's shoulders slumped in defeat. Rebel let out a triumphant bark, as if sensing the victory. As Riggs ushered the sullen HOA president back to her own property, Jill felt a surge of gratitude. With the officer's help, she and Mark had found a way to defy the tyrannical HOA and give a deserving dog a loving home. The battle lines had been drawn, and Jill was more determined than ever to protect her new furry friend. In the following weeks, Jill and Mark's home became a safe haven for local strays, thanks to Officer Riggs' continued support. Whenever Nancy or another HOA member tried to interfere, Riggs would swiftly step in and shut down their attempts. One afternoon, as Jill was filling Rebel's food and water bowls, she heard a faint whimpering coming from the bushes near the sidewalk. Cautiously, she approached and peered inside, gasping at the sight of a small, shivering puppy. Oh, you poor thing, she murmured, gently scooping up the frightened animal. As she cradled the pup in her arms, Rebel trotted over, sniffing curiously. Jill hurried inside, her mind racing. Mark, come quick, I found another stray dog. Her husband rushed in from the kitchen, his eyes widening. Another one. Where did you find him? Just outside, hiding in the bushes. Jill carefully placed the puppy on the couch, Rebel hovering protectively nearby. We have to help him, Mark. He's so small and scared. Mark nodded, already preparing a makeshift bed and bowl of water. Of course. Let's get him settled in. I'll call Officer Riggs, see if he can swing by and check him out. As Mark stepped out to make the call, Jill tenderly stroked the puppy's soft fur, whispering soothing words. Rebel rested his chin on the couch, his eyes fixed on the tiny newcomer. Moments later, Riggs arrived, his expression concerned. Another stray, huh? Let me take a look. He examined the puppy, gently probing for any injuries or signs of illness. He seems to be in decent shape, just a little dehydrated and malnourished, Riggs reported. Good thing you found him when you did. I'll take him to the vet to get checked out, then we can figure out the next steps. Jill felt a surge of relief. Thank you, officer. We couldn't just leave him out there all alone. Riggs smiled. I know. You two are doing a great thing for these animals. He paused, then added, speaking of which, I've got another stray that could use a good home. If you're up for it, I'd be happy to bring him by later. Jill exchanged an excited glance with Mark. Absolutely. We'd love to help however we can. As Riggs carefully carried the puppy out to his vehicle, Jill felt a renewed sense of purpose. With each rescued animal, she and Mark were dealing a blow to the HOA's tyrannical reign. This was their fight, and they were winning. Over the next several weeks, Jill and Mark's home became a sanctuary for a growing number of rescued strays, much to the dismay of the HOA. Nancy and her cronies made countless attempts to intervene, but with Officer Riggs' steadfast support, their efforts were repeatedly thwarted. One evening, as Jill was preparing dinner, she heard a commotion outside. Rushing to the window, she gasped at the sight of Nancy and two burly security guards marching toward her door. This ends now, Jill Barker. Nancy screeched, pounding on the front door. Open up, or we're coming in. Jill quickly ushered the dogs into the backyard, her heart racing. Mark, call Officer Riggs. Now. Before her husband could react, the door was flung open, and Nancy barged in, her beady eyes wild. That's it. I'm having all these animals impounded, and you're both being fined again. Heavily. You can't do that. Jill cried, standing her ground. The officer said we have the right to foster these dogs. I don't care what that fool said, Nancy sneered. This is my community, and I won't let you turn it into a petting zoo. She gestured to the security guards. Get those mutts out of here. But just as the men started toward the backyard, a familiar voice boomed from the doorway. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Officer Riggs strode into the house, his expression stern. Nancy, I've warned you about this before. Harassing residents and threatening to seize their pets is a serious violation of the law. Nancy's face turned beet red. This doesn't concern you, officer. These animals are trespassing on private property. Actually, it does concern me, Riggs shot back. Because I've already granted this family permission to foster these strays. And I have the full backing of the City Animal Welfare Department. He pulled a thick folder from his jacket and thrust it toward Nancy. Here are the official documents. Any attempt to interfere will result in your arrest and the revocation of the HOA's operating license. Nancy's eyes widened as she frantically flipped through the pages. Jill watched, hardly daring to breathe, as the color drained from the HOA president's face. This can't be, Nancy stammered, her voice quivering. You can't do this to me. Oh, but I can, Riggs said flatly. The community has spoken, Nancy. It's time for a change. As the defeated HOA president and her minions shuffled out of the house, Jill felt a surge of triumphant joy. She and Mark had won. With Officer Riggs' help, they had not only saved the strays, but also dealt a crushing blow to the tyrannical reign of the HOA. It was a victory for compassion, justice, and the unwavering power of the human-animal bond. Jill looked around at the rescued dogs, now safe and sound in their loving home, and knew that this was just the beginning. The fight for a kinder, more empathetic community was far from over.